basically started, my first drawings I did when I was about 2½, and I turned the tumbler upside down on paper, traced around to make a round circle, and then drew faces. So I wasn't very far from the original event before I had a pencil in my hand. And then by the time I was 3, I was drawing cars and people waving out the windows. So I drew a lot. And the whole idea of creating something from, well, that didn't exist before is very, very innovating. And you people who are here in this university, to learn how to do something that will be your career or the start of your career. Having a linear career anymore is sort of a fate worse than financial death. So as you expand horizontally, you meet people outside of your immediate expertise area, because that's very critical. The fields are combining and coalescing, and people graduate from the university with a degree, and within 5 years they're not doing what they graduated to do, which is sort of a statistic. Here tonight we have links from the past. We have Charles Oefke and his wife Josepha. Charles worked with Raymond Loewy's studio in Paris. We have Bob Marks and his wife Roberta. Bob was one of the top marketing people at Chrysler Corporation. And we have friends of ours, Jan and Larry. So the past is something that is your foundation. And I'm writing my autobiography right now. It'll be on sale in about a year. But it's exciting to recall these things and find out what you did and why you did it. And you don't figure this out until you've been at this for about 40-something, 50 years. This presentation, oh, come on, don't do this to me. I don't need warnings on my screen. Yeah. No, see, that doesn't do it. It's Command 3. They've changed everything in QuickTime for this generation. Isn't this too much fun? If your car was like this, your tires wouldn't fit. but just on Wednesdays. West, it's never done this before. Smartest people on the planet. I've been in quite a few places doing design work, doing presentations around the world, and you always meet somebody who's smarter than you are, and that's very important because none of us can be masters of everything. And if you learn on a job, I get a fast update from somebody who's been doing it maybe for the rest of their whole life so far. Whether it's marine architecture, industrial design for automobiles, or architecture, and you learn very quick, you soak it up, so that your mind has a saturated grasp of what the immediate design target is for the solution. And when that job's over, you forget it, because when you go back 3 or 4 years later, it will all change. So the thing about doing a nonlinear career is that you keep doing different things for different people, and that is education, and it's exciting, and it never gets dull. We were up at Apple by invitation, my partner Roger Servik and I, in Cupertino late last year, the industrial design staff and the graphics staff, and it was a lot of fun. They liked our presentation so well that they gave us each an iPod Touch, and then 2 weeks later I got this 17-inch Pro laptop sent to me. So I thought, whoa, that's really cool. So this presentation was done for the Apple folks, and I thought, well, if they liked it, that's Apple, you'd probably like it too. Now I've seen all these pictures before, and that's why I come to these things, because I can see them again and again and again. The program is done in Final Cut Pro, and it's a QuickTime movie. This is to let you know who I am, so you're not in the wrong room. The whole deal with being inventive is there's fantasy and there's imagination. Einstein actually said imagination is more important than facts. So that's something. Imagination is something you can't learn how to do like you can memorize facts. So data, you can document it, you can look it up, you can Google it, but imagination starts from zero pretty much each time. And that's the critical difference between imagination and factual reference. So fantasy we think is a uniquely human. I don't know if cats fantasize about a better grade of tuna or not. I haven't talked to that many cats. But I had a dog for 12 years and he ate exactly the same thing every day and never complained, and he loved me dearly. So, but fantasy is a human trait because it allows you to visualize or imagine something that hasn't happened yet, or something that has happened but you imagine it happened differently, and you manipulate this cross-current of narrative inside your head, and you come up with something that's unique, and that's why they pay you money. That's important. Now, some of these images are from the 60s. This was done in 1962. It was a montage of climate change across the globe, which impacts on industrial design for vehicles, for products, for architecture. All the things that we make to use are multi-environment suitable. Otherwise, they're not really marketable on a global scale. So this was a panoply of climatic change, and the fact is that the desert, the hot lava, this thing here is pure 60s. I mean, look at this. This is just insane. And then we go to Arctic here. So this rendering, it's all in gouache. I say that gouache is French for bitchy medium. It's very tactile. It's very tactile. But once you get used to it, whether it's acrylic gouache or just plain old, granular gouache, it's a fantastic medium. And I started to use it from Art Center forward because it's optically flat when you finish it, and it's for photography. So most of my work was photographic at that time for publication or use in presentations. Fantasy can be in your mind, or it can be in the real world. We were in Germany near Munich, went to see Neuschwanstein. It's the biggest tourist ripoff in Europe. It's all by itself. King Ludwig, they don't know whether he was drowned or poisoned or what. They had to get rid of him. He bankrupted the treasury. But it's the first castle built, and it was electrified from the start. It's really a fantastic architectural, but that's fantasy, pure fantasy, and it's real. Now, this was an inversion of what you'd usually think the procedure should be. This was a hand-painted gouache castle that was going to be used in CG on the web for the splash screen to enter into this world. And these were going to be pavilions that would be rented out to different corporate entities. So it had to look fascinating. Here's my perpetual sunset, my favorite lighting scheme. And the central castle, you go in here, and then you'd be shunted off to these various corporate emplacements floating in the CG atmosphere. So it was a case of hand-painted artwork inspiring a full CG exercise. The name of this illustration is Cosmic Bride. This will be in holographic 3D, 6 panels in the restaurant that I'm currently finishing up designing in New York City on 6th Avenue. And it's going to be done by a friend of mine in Hollywood. So it'll be a fully rotational CG character. This took about, maybe 45 or 50 minutes, very quick. I used leftover paint from a rendering that I've just finished. And some of the nicest things happen very fast. So all this will be floating around the character as it rotates in a 3D holographic environment. Roger and I were invited, to Atlanta to be the guest artist. I did the cover of the brochure for the show, for the comic show that year. This was the robot angel, Dangerous Angel. This is on the cover of the catalog. This was just before 9/11. We left Atlanta, drove up to DeKalb, Illinois. That's when the crash in the World Trade Center happened. Did a presentation that night, packed house. Drove down to Lexington the next day, did another presentation at the university there, standing room only. And then we drove our 300 trace cross country, because if we'd gone back to the airport and turned it in, we never would have got off the ground, obviously. So this in stained glass, the whole atmosphere is strange. And it's robotic, it's machine, and yet it evokes a softer sort of angel mystique. This was done, this is an interesting comment on how advertising agencies work. I've never had very much luck with advertising agencies. They have more management than they really need, almost uniformly. So this is done for U.S. Seal. And I thought, well, let's do a fantasy scenario. This is a family on their vacation. Here's a little boy. He's caught a two-spined fish down here. Family, mommy and daddy are here with this sculpture. This is the vehicle they came in. And we don't know whether this is real back here, whether it's just holographic imaging. How do we know? As we go into the future, and you won't know, we'll be able to eliminate the proscenium with reality and imagination and CG inspired and presented alternate reality with a seamless trip between the two. I don't know how we're going to handle that emotionally, intellectually, socially, but it is going to happen. If you read some of Gibson's stuff, people will run around with a jack in the back of their head and you just jack in directly. And that's sort of scary. You'll be way off somewhere and not even take time to order pizza. Sometimes you've got to go to the real world to get inspired. So I was asked to do, commissioned to do 3 illustrations for the first, and as it turned out, the last Tokyo International Sport Fair. And the renderings were to be done in 3 essentially monochromatic colors to match the 3 prize ribbon colors, blue, red, and gold. So I was coming back from Houston on Continental, and I'm sitting there on the plane thinking, now let's see, I need one more. I got the other 2, they're nailed. I got those. I need one more. And they all had to be audience participation, large format, arena, panoply of stuff going on. And I was leafing through the in-flight magazine and saw an article about greyhound racing in Miami. Well, of course, that's what they do down there. They go to lacrosse and play and bet on the dogs. So I thought, that's it. I'll take this, rip it out of the magazine. Well, that's a long time ago. And so I took this photograph back to Detroit. And back then, this is before the internet, before personal computers, before, you couldn't sit at home and do all this stuff on a computer. So I took this down to the Photoshop, the photography shop, had it photographed, blown up to 20 by 30, my rendering size, from edge to edge, and then essentially mechanized the dogs. So in order to get this, now the action is absolutely authentic, because to get this feeling of dynamic stride, and the foot coming down, and the dust, and the whole dynamic action in progress here, you really have to have a live model to copy. And of course now you can download armatures that do all of this. But this is back before computers were accessible to the average person. The scenario is that this is a race. These are about 80-some feet tall, maybe 100. They're robots. Now they run themselves, but the jockeys, up in the heads are 10 people who have won the nationwide or intergalactic gameplay, joystick, thumb switch contest. So essentially, it's a game of strategy just like a jockey on a horse, okay? Except that it's happening in this gigantic size. Everything's gigantic. The thing they ride around here, the bump strip. Here's our people down here, and they're waving this electronic wireless wand for betting here. We're way ahead of the current wireless market. These are hydraulic lifts that people board. You sign a waiver. And as these huge machines thunder by, these follow them, fairly close. So it's very exciting. So it's the running of the 6 dogs. So now we have fantasy, we have imagination, and imagination suggests an end use other than just, for its own amusement. And the question then becomes, if you've created an imaginative scenario, how do we get there? Either in imaginary forms or in reality, if it's a real